In ancient Rome, the arena was not just a place of combat, but a stage where destinies were played out with every blow, where sweat and blood mingled with the hope of achieving glory or condemnation. For some, being a gladiator was simply surviving, a brutal life. For others, it was an opportunity to make history, to become a legend. Being a gladiator didn't just mean being ready to fight. It meant facing death head-on, without fear, without mercy. It was walking a razor-thin line so that with every battle, the line between life and eternity blurred. In the eyes of a gladiator, there was only one constant: the challenge. Today, we will explore the lives of gladiators who transcended that line, those who not only survived, but left behind a legacy that has lasted for centuries. Through their victories, their defeats, and their sacrifices, they immortalized themselves in Roman history. These are the men who have left us lessons on courage, honor, resilience, and humanity. In the dusty streets of Pompeii, among ruins that time and nature have preserved, inscriptions were found that withstood the passage of the centuries. On the city walls, the names of gladiators remain engraved, witnesses to their greatness. Among these names, one stands out especially: Tetraites. Tetraites was neither an emperor nor a nobleman, but his name was marked in history thanks to his bravery. His victory against an opponent named Prudes was so impressive that even the simple inhabitants of Pompeii, with rudimentary tools like nails and charcoal, decided to immortalize it in graffiti. The people did not forget Tetraites, and that victory transcended the boundaries of the city. Tetraites' fighting style was imposing. As a murmillo, he fought with a large rectangular shield, a short sword, and a helmet with a crest-shaped visor. But what surprised his opponents the most was not his equipment, but his audacity. He fought without armor on his chest, relying solely on his agility and defense. Every appearance he made in the arena was a gamble, an extreme risk that the Roman people admired. What was most fascinating about Tetraites was not only his fighting style, but the fact that his fame crossed seas and mountains. Vases, clay objects, and graffiti with his name were found in places as far as Gaul, Britannia, and Pannonia. His popularity, unprecedented for a gladiator of his time, demonstrates that his name resonated beyond the borders of the Roman Empire. But if anyone personified the connection between a gladiator and the opulence of Rome, it was Spiculus. In the halls of the imperial palace, amidst the intrigues of power and fame, the gladiator Spiculus became a unique figure, Nero's favorite gladiator. Unlike other gladiators, whose struggle for survival kept them away from the pleasures of life, Spiculus enjoyed a level of privileges that few could imagine. Nero, known for his cruelty and excesses, gave him palaces, lands, and riches. He not only granted him imperial favor, but turned him into a kind of Roman celebrity, a symbol of the glory of his empire. Nero was so obsessed with Spiculus that, in his most desperate moments, he declared that he would rather die at the hands of this gladiator than any other. However, fate's tragedy wrote the final page of that story. The emperor failed to find his champion in time and ended up taking his own life with the help of a servant. But the legacy of Spiculus was not limited to his relationship with Nero. He was a gladiator who represented the rise of an ordinary man to an imperial figure, something completely unprecedented in Rome at that time. In his struggle, he not only demonstrated his skill, but also transcended the limits of fame. achieving an immortality that few could dream of. Among the most celebrated gladiators, we not only find those who fought for their lives, but also those who did it for art and spectacle. Hermes, for example, was much more than a gladiator. He was a master of versatility, an unpredictable fighter who never showed his technique the same way twice. While many gladiators specialized in a unique style, Hermes became a legend for his ability to adapt to his opponents. It didn't matter the type of foe he faced. He could always change his fighting style and use it to his advantage. Martial, the Roman poet, praised him as a man worthy of the gods, and he was not exaggerating. His dance in the arena between calculated moves and raw strength made him a fascinating figure, but his greatest attribute was not just his combat skill. It was his ability to captivate both his audience and his opponents. With each fight, he created a spectacle that they would never forget, becoming a symbol of perfection in the Roman arena. At a time when fights were synonymous with death, Hermes transformed them into a living work of art. Of course, not all gladiator stories were of celebrity and fame. Some, like that of Carpophoros, the bestiarius, were a battle against nature itself. Carpophoros didn't face men, but wild beasts, lions, rhinoceroses, bulls. His greatest feat occurred when, in a single show, he faced and killed 20 animals. In the arena, this fight shook the Colosseum. The audience could hardly believe what they were seeing. Carpophoros, without heavy armor, faced nature itself, challenging its brute force with unique skill. His name went down in history, not only for his bravery, but for the symbolic victory over the wild, an act that represented man's control over chaos. Carpophoros was compared to Hercules, and his mastery of animals made him a symbol of power, resilience, and the human capacity to dominate even the uncontrollable. And of course, we cannot talk about gladiators without mentioning Spartacus, a man whose life was much more than a simple fight in the arena. Spartacus didn't just fight for his freedom, but for the freedom of thousands. Captured, sold as a slave, and trained to be a gladiator, Spartacus rebelled against his fate and challenged the Roman Empire in a fight that would change history. In 73 BC, Spartacus led a gladiator escape in Capua that sparked the Third Servile War. With his army of slaves and gladiators, Spartacus defeated Roman legions and put the most powerful generals of the empire in check. Within a few months, his rebellion grew into a threat to Rome itself. Spartacus, with his brilliant tactics and leadership, became a symbol of resistance against oppression. But like all great rebellions, his also had a tragic end. In 71 BC, after being defeated by Crassus's legions, Spartacus died in battle. His body was never found, but his name was never forgotten. Spartacus was not just a gladiator, he was a leader, a man who challenged the greatest empire in the world for something much greater than personal freedom. Freedom for all the oppressed. The story of gladiators is the story of men who not only fought in the arena, but fought against fate, against the empire, and against death itself. These men left a mark on Rome that will never fade. And today, their stories remain alive, not only in the walls of the Colosseum, but in our memory. If this history lesson impressed you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.